Hello everyone. In addition to accessing a list using its positive index, in Python we can also use its negative index. In this video we'll be speaking about how to search for an item in a list using its positive or negative index. So we'll start off by creating a list. I'm going to call my list months and I'm going to give it initial values of January, Feb, March, April, May, June, July. Okay, now I don't want to bore you. I'm just very slow, so I'm going to stop there. And let's have a look at its its positive index. So January's positive index would be 0, and Feb would be 1, March would be 2, and April would be 3, May would be 4, and June would be 5, and July would be 6. Let's have a look at what the negative index would be. Now the negative index is usually starts from the last value, and that would be -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, -7. So January would be -7, Feb would be -6, and March would be -5, April would be -4, May would be -3, and June would be -2, and July would be -1. Okay, so now we've got our indices. Let's ask the user to enter the location of a month in a list. Now we will improve this program over the coming videos, but for now, let's assume that the user is going to enter an integer representing the index of their list. So our message is, I'm just going to copy that because that's sort of what the message is. So let's enter, we're asking the user to enter the location of the month of the list. But remember, the user is going to be entering an index. So this comes in as a string. We do need to convert the entry to an integer. So our variable month index is actually an integer. Now we want to check if the index is within the range before we continue to give it the list. So say let me just show you what happens if we print out the result. So that would be, and let's give it whatever we learn how to spell first. Let's give it the month index. So let's just see how this runs. So if we say 5, it says it's June. It would be good to have something like that. And if we say -2, that will also be June. So it's now using the negative index. But the problem happens is if I press 9 and there's no index there, that is 9. So over here, I don't know what happened, but yeah. So now we get a list index out of range. We have an index error. So we want to kind of do some sort of a check before we print out anything like that. So for now, let's just do it here. Let's check if the index is within the range. So what we want to do is we want to check the maximum range and the minimum range. So if I run this one more time and I put in a -8, so that's also another index that does not exist. So we get another index error. But so we want to check that maximum value. So what would be the maximum possible positive index and what would be the minimum? That would be a good one to do. So if I, before we print out actually, let's declare two variables. One would be the maximum of positive index, and let's give it, so that would actually be the length of the list. So it's going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's the maximum, but we don't want to include it because 7 is not a valid range. Okay, we start from 0, but 7 we would like to exclude. But for now, let's just get that number anyway, and the length of months. And let's kind of, let me comment this out. Let's print out that value. Let's see what we get. So whatever we enter, but now it's telling me the maximum size of the list is is length of the months, which is 7. And we can also find out the minimum negative index, and that would be, so we want to get 0 minus whatever the max would be, so minus 7. So that would be our minimum minimum negative index. Yeah, I got it. Okay, but you want to keep in mind that this one we shouldn't include the 7, but with the minimum negative index we do include the minus. So maybe what we can do is, let's just print it out for now. Let's see what we get. So we get the maximum positive index, that would be 7, and then we get the minimum negative index, and that would be minus 7. So we want to check. Now we can't really get rid of these. This was just us debugging our work. So what we want to check is, we want to check if the index that's entered by the user, if that is greater or equal to the maximum. So we need the equal to sign, because a 7 is not a valid index. So we stop at 6. Or if the month index is less than that minimum index, but we don't have an include sign because we actually need minus 7 is a valid index. So if that's the case, we want to let the user know that it's an invalid index, and else we would want that to be printed out. So I need that message actually. Check if, yeah, that should have been display the results to the user. And that would be here. Okay, so that should do it. So when we say it's a 9, we get an invalid index. If we say it's a 7, that's also, sorry, I kind of clicked on something else, so that's an invalid index. If we say it's a minus 7 is okay, so that would be January. But if I say minus 8, that's not going to be happy, it's an invalid index. But anything in between, say 3 or 4, that would be May, and we can access the negative index of May, which was minus 3, so minus 3. Okay, so that's it. But in the next video we're going to put this into a loop, and we're going to keep on checking until the user, so if the user puts in an invalid index, we'll give the user the opportunity to re-enter until we get a valid one. So stay tuned.